Hi, this is Nick Briscoe. Welcome to the Whistle Test podcast, brought to you from my Substack infotainment channel, The Song's the Thing. This podcast is a read-aloud of part 2 of a 4-part article entitled Songwriting Basics, Song Structure. Part 2 delves into 2 distinctly different songwriting paths and the main types of song they each produce. You can find the complete article on my Substack channel in the section called Tin Pan Alley and in the archive. Finally, this part of the article is actually an excerpt taken from my book, Your Song Online for All Time, Pro-Songwriting. You can find out about this book and where to purchase it on my website, nickbriscoe.com. That's Nick Briscoe, all one word, and on my Substack channel, nickbriscoe.substack.com. Enjoy! Section 3. Songwriting Paths and the Main Types of Song. Deacon Blues obscurity versus drive time prominence. In a nutshell, a songwriter probably should, in my humble opinion, choose a direction, or at very least be aware of 2 totally polar opposite different songwriting paths. This section is about these paths and the main types of song they usually produce. As a songwriter, who do you want to be, and what do you want? Deacon Blues obscurity or drive time prominence, or maybe a bit of both. For sure, these 2 paths mentioned and their respective styles do not form a definitive list, so maybe there's another path you want to follow. Anyway, Deacon Blues obscurity. It's my experience that at 10 or 11 in the evening, after a few beers, at my local live music open mic hangout, when I've just poured out an angst-filled self-penned ballad or 2, some tipsy type will, a bit sheepishly at first, try to catch my eye from a distance, then rapidly approach me and dive headlong in, unstoppably telling me how wonderful my heartbreaker and I both are, how my song's lyrics really resonated with them. They then proceed to explain in minute detail exactly why. So starts their drunken diatribe, their life story. 20 minutes later, if I'm very lucky, I'm free again. My new fan is off back into the night, never to be seen or heard of ever again. They definitely didn't pay me directly for singing my song, or directly buy a copy of it online during my performance. At very best, they may have bought me a drink that my liver or I really didn't need. Oh, and obviously I wasn't organised. I didn't have a box of CDs of my latest angst album with me to sell direct to my new fan, or any merch, no t-shirts, nothing. And for sure, the next day, my new fan will have forgotten it all. Buying my song online didn't miraculously appear on their definitely have to do today list. Oh, and let's be honest, of course, you also have to factor in that at that time of night, around midnight, after a few or more beers, almost anything sounds good. And so it goes. This is the life of the lonely bard, the heroic, rambling singer-songwriter who attempts to be real and authentic by writing and singing about what they feel from their perspective, tramping from town to town, from venue to venue, from country to country, like a rolling stone, pouring out their angst. It's a valid form of songwriting. The songs of these valiant singer-songwriters are their personal lyrical scripts, tailor-made for them to recount their real-life experiences, feelings and thoughts to a live, late-night, usually hard-drinking, etc. audience. They momentarily let their audience, those right there then, face-to-face in front of them, into their inner world. It's all about I. I did this. I said that. I felt this way. She or they did this to me. It's all very personal, all self-centred. These introspective heroes whine, proselytise, whinge, rant, protest and weep. then romantically disappear into the sunset, leaving the world, well, maybe a bit better, but more or less unchanged. Their audience drunkenly sympathises very briefly while soaking up the ambience of this shared, nocturnal, moody moment, then goes home, sleeps it off and forgets. Our hero has to do this constantly, maybe 200 or 250 times each year, just to make ends meet and survive. Very few of these modern-day folk minstrels ever translate this lifestyle into long-term prosperity and fame. A few do, briefly. Think about Damien Rice, who I would say was definitely an introspective type. Nevertheless, his introspection was intricately detailed, imbued with a sense of irony and laced with humour. Also, contemplate the incredible lyrics of Steely Dan's song Deacon Blues. They capture and explain this lonely lifestyle choice perfectly. Yep, basically on this songwriting path, as is also true of the late night jazz saxophonist's path, get ready to drink Scotch whisky and or snort coke all night long and die behind the wheel or fatally fall from a hotel balcony. A brief tangential aside. Whiskey, spelt with a capital W and ending just Y, as opposed to whiskey, lowercase w and ending EY, signifies it was distilled in Scotland. Technically, lyrically, to be totally accurate, there's no need to say Scotch whisky. Just whisky is quite sufficient. Calling it just Scotch, well, let's not go there. If blending words is to be a core element within your trade, knowing these intricacies may prove useful, or not. Perhaps those more astute would argue that it would be only possible to tell the difference between these two words, whiskey and whiskey, visually, not audibly. Also true. Which could mean that using the word Scotch whisky within a lyric is a valid use of artistic license. But beware, listeners can be discerning critics, and even artistic license can be endorsed and lost. Write intelligently and experientially if you want to attract an intelligent, experienced audience. If you would like to listen to a quintessential example of intelligent, experiential songwriting and lyrical genius, search on bandcamp.com for a song called Some Fella's Heartbreaker by Tim Rogers and the Temperance Union. Perfection. Okay, stop, Forrest, stop. And I'm back. At best, after you're dead, or at very least, when your life has gone to total dysfunctional shit, someone will make a film about you and your life's misadventure and get stinking rich from it. But you almost definitely won't. To get a taste of this, check out the film Crazy Heart, starring Jeff Bridges, based loosely on the life of Hank Thompson. The fact is that most good songwriters are more than mildly dysfunctional. Our Deacon Blue bards have chosen to intimately show their dysfunctional self to their late-night live audience. Is this entertainment? I'm not sure that it is. For sure, it's skillful and can be very polished, but does it take the audience out of themselves and help them forget their troubles for a while? Again, I'm not sure that it does. For sure, maybe one member of the audience will identify with some of the lyrics. There may well be some kind of momentary shared dysfunctional bond, a brief recognition and belief that they're not the only broken, fucked up soul in the room. Has that person been entertained, transported and elevated momentarily away from their day-to-day problems? Again, no, I don't think so. Drive time prominence. And the fact is, that is what most people want and even expect from music. They want to be entertained. With that firmly in mind, the main thing that a songwriter should be offering any audience is entertainment. The songwriter's overarching offer and request should be, let me entertain you. Just ask Robbie Williams, he's a master of this, along with many other mainstream stars, Elvis or Lady Gaga or Freddie Mercury or Madonna or Elton John or Britney Spears. That is why record companies exist. Entertainment. They fund entertainment. Record companies are looking for entertainers. These entertainers all have one thing in common, their audience. It's early morning, work day, drive time. People all over the world, in their cars or doing their work commute by train or bus, listening to the breakfast radio show or a managed playlist from their favourite streaming platform. And what's interesting about this is that the successful songs, the ones that get played during drive time and that people relate to, remember and buy, yes, some actually go online and purchase this music, are all written by dysfunctional songwriters, equally dysfunctional as their Deacon Blues minstrel brothers in arms. It's just that their songs are written from a whole other perspective. So firstly, a key point, drive time is where the money is. That is where you can make a long-term living from empathetic songwriting, not just get bought the occasional after a great gig beer by a sympathetic semi-fan. A second key point is all great songwriters are majorly dysfunctional. Due to their dysfunctionality, they are able to clearly perceive and clearly communicate feelings, thoughts and experiences. The Deacon Blues minstrel sings about themselves, about their angst feelings, depressing thoughts and tragic experiences. I heard this once described as slitsy-wristy music. On the other hand, the drive time songwriter gives the individual members of their audience themselves seen absolutely believably through the eyes of the songwriter's imaginary characters, in imaginary situations, in imaginary places. And they do all of this in under 1 minute. During the first 45 seconds of a song, the listener is invited in and a connection is made. They identify with the characters in the song. The characters are just like them, so much so that they really could be them. So it's like the singer is talking directly to them, and the song is about them and their lives. The drive time listener feels recognised. They feel empathy, but positively, as opposed to negative sympathy with the Deacon Blues bard's angst. Who exactly makes up the majority of this drive time audience? Successful drive time songs are mainly aimed at, maybe you guessed it, teenage girls and young women between the ages of 20 and 35. Mostly the teenage girls are on their way to school, while the young women are on their way to work or taking their kids to school or daycare. Just think about one of these young women for a minute. Really try to get a sense of who she is, what her life situation is like, what she's personally experiencing during drive time that morning. If you can do that, if you can perceive who she really is and what she wants, then you stand more of a chance of being able to write a song that will really touch her, that really connects and invites her in. It's the hardest thing to do as a songwriter, to really understand the lives of your toughest, most discerning audience members. Without winning them over, it's doubtful you will have any real, lasting drive time success. Can you even imagine how it is to be this young woman at 7 a.m. on her way to work? Why should she choose and like your song? It's the toughest job interview you'll ever go to. Your song is your interview script. It's what is going to make you stand out during drive time and be the reason that this young woman chose, sung along to and purchased your song. and then tells all her friends all about it. So who is she? Is she 22 or 31? Is she rich or poor? Is she happily married to a great guy or in a catastrophic relationship with a monster narcissist? Does she have a thriving career or is she stuck in a dead-end job that she hates? Does she dream about having or does she already have kids? How are they? Happy? Healthy? What's the weather like that day? How's the traffic flowing? Is she late? Has she got enough fuel in her car to get to work? What other underlying problems does she have? Let's say we look at the toughest customer on this spectrum, the one least likely to listen. Let's say she is late 20s, poor, married but unhappily, with a child who has many of their own problems, which she takes personally as her own failure as a mother, on a day that she's really late for work, stuck on the motorway in heavy traffic in the pouring rain at 8 a.m. in an old beaten up car, the heater's stopped working, it's low on fuel and just about to die on her. In order for you to succeed and for her to choose your song, it has to connect with her, invite her in, lift her spirits, take her out of herself for a minute or two and get her singing along. It has to grab her empathetically and entertain her. Can you, as a songwriter, do that? Can you think like this person and perceive what she feels? Because that's the craft. You have to be able to give this woman herself as you see her and do it accurately without making her feel worse about her already shit situation. She needs to be elevated and entertained, and that's your job as a songwriter. How? In under a minute and no longer than 3 minutes in total. Obviously, this is too complex to cover in detail here. However, here's some key elements to consider. A song is something that is sung, obviously, so the memorable melody stroke storytelling lyric combination are, obviously, one key element. The other key element is the music, big topic, which one needs at least a few years to immerse in. I say best to keep it simple. There are quite literally hundreds, probably thousands, of great popular songs in many genres written just using 3 chords. Some of the best only use 2. My personal favourite example being Fleetwood Mac's Dreams by Stevie Nicks, which is basically just 2 chords, F major and G major, throughout. Lou Reed said it best, and I quote, "1 chord is fine, 2 chords are pushing it, 3 chords and you're into jazz." The imaginary character singing your memorable melodic lyric needs to be likeable, a winner, under 30, and either a man singing to a woman, think Suspicious Minds by Elvis Presley, or a woman singing to a woman, think Jolene by Dolly Parton. This, of course, can be reversed. It could be a woman singing to a man, If I Ain't Got You by Alicia Keys, or a man singing to a man, The Boys Are Back in Town by Phil Lynott. And of course, there will always be brilliant exceptions in other formats. For example, Hey Jude by the Beatles, sung by a man to a young man or teenage boy. And These Boots Are Made for Walking by Nancy Sinatra, a woman to a cheating man. Or Dreams by Stevie Nicks, a woman to her male ex-partner. And of course, people don't only like love songs. Many people love and enjoy deeply introspective and melancholic songs and music. Just for example, Trent Reznor's Hurt and Johnny Cash's brilliant cover of this, or Eric Satie's Toi Jeunopodie. However, most often what works commercially is an upbeat love song sung by a man to a woman or a woman to a woman. There's something else that needs to be pointed out here, and in these woke times I'm stepping into dangerous territory, but what the fuck. Take a song like the one I just mentioned, Suspicious Minds. That could be a gay man singing to a gay man. The song is one lover talking to their partner. In that context, it still works brilliantly as a song. It's not gender specific. So equally, If that same song was sung by a female singer, it could be a gay woman singing to her lover. So in some kind of bizarre twist of fate, I find myself about to say that you could say that this type of song is not specifically gender binary, it's more gender fluid. In all cases, the song's lyrical format should be an ongoing linear conversation between you and I, and the lyric should employ both those pronouns a lot. I gave you everything, now you light up my world. Here I cite Your Song by Bernie Taupin and Elton John. It's a perfect example of everything just mentioned. It's a song from a lover to their lover. At the end of listening to that song, you are not only transported into another world, the world of someone so grateful that you simply exist, you are also elevated and want to cry happy tears because they bigged you up so beautifully. If you want to master all of this, these ideas come from a mixture of my own experience and many other sources. Many of the ideas, maybe even most, originally come from the late great Ralph Murphy, a hit-selling, standalone, jobbing songwriter. So get his book, which was revised in 2013. I think it is still very relevant today in 2022. It's called Murphy's Laws of Songwriting, the book, by Ralph Murphy. It's not news that the key to mastery is the 10,000 hour law. You need to practice your craft endlessly, at least 10,000 hours before you master it. You have to imitate the greats and then develop your own style from that. You have to write a lot of duds before you start creating diamonds. It's a process you can learn and develop with time and practice. If, unless you're unbelievably naturally gifted, you attempt to just feel it and only be spontaneous and bypass the mastery step, you're probably setting yourself up for failure. Without study and practice, both on your own and playing with other musicians, you are not likely to be able to play or write anything that will grip an audience. Spontaneity and feel result from having the develop mastery mindset. I remember vaguely that Ralph Murphy discussed all of this in an interview I read or saw. He said something like this, that year in, year out, he wrote songs constantly, more than 100 songs a year. He wrote specifically in a focused way, with an artist in mind, with an audience in mind, with what the music industry at that time was selling most of in mind. He did his market research. He gave the industry what it wanted. He didn't write what he wanted to write from his perspective about his life. He wrote what the audience wanted to hear about themselves. He would make demonstration recordings of less than half of what he wrote in a year. And only a handful of these demos would make it to becoming finished recorded songs. Only maybe 5 a year out of more than 100 were released. And maybe once every 4 or 5 years he'd have a hit record. That for me puts it all into perspective. For every 400 or 500 songs that Ralph wrote, one would be a hit. He had many hits because he wrote hundreds of duds that never even made it to the demo studio. If you haven't had a hit yet, just ask yourself, how many songs in total have you written? Have you written 500 songs? Have you even written 100? Successful songwriting is not always about luck. It's not just about God-given talent. It's also about hard work and perseverance. It's a numbers game too. For sure, you need some basic aptitude and flair, but aside from that, there are many songwriting skills that can be learned and perfected over time. And again, of course, about seemingly divinely gifted talent, well, there will always be exceptions, those super gifted phenomena, like Prince or Amy Winehouse or Jimi Hendrix or Janis Joplin or George Michael or Kate Bush or Freddie Mercury or Stevie Nicks or David Bowie. For me, their work forms a treasure chamber brimming with inspiration and knowledge. Finally, within songwriting, there's an almost scientific strand with formulae that can be applied and combined with honed skills. Again, Ralph Murphy refines this idea and wrote and lectured about it. In particular, he talks about how in songwriting there are only 6 arrangement forms that commercially successful songs are or have historically been written in. Go search for it. If you know about this stuff, and you know a bit about the history of the commercial music business, about songs that have been successful, you'll see that Ralph Murphy is totally 100% spot on with this assertion. There are only 6 forms in which successful songs are written. Are you a songwriter? Do you know what these song forms are? You should. You need to know. So, what should you do? Which songwriting path is for you? Become a prominent drive-time songmaster? This could be a standalone jobbing freelancer or a permanent member of a band or a project. Or become an obscure, wandering Deacon Blues minstrel, a lone wolf. Personally, I'd recommend both. One to make money, to make a living from. The other to test out your ideas and as a bit of live catharsis instead of paying for an expensive mental health therapist to dissect your dysfunctions. Just never put forward any part of your angst Deacon Blues set, not even the one the late night crowd love the best, as a proposed drive time hit, because it will almost definitely flop. Unless, of course, it's Reznor's Hurt performed by Cash.